Welcome to Cashflow Savannah, episode 16. How are you, Chandler? Are you doing okay?
I'm doing good. We are getting ready for a tropical storm or a hurricane. I'm not sure which one it is yet, but that's what's going on right now.
Yes. And I know as Mr. Operations, I know you are going crazy. And, I'm glad you had time today to record because our guest was excellent. We had on the amazing Tori Benson. She is a commercial real estate investor and she's out of Bozeman, Montana. But just very interesting. I learned so much. I've been in this field for many years, and I have to say that she really had a lot of great tips. So, no matter what kind of real estate investing you plan to do, I really want to encourage everyone to listen to what Tori says because her processes they really apply to all markets and all types of real estate.
Yeah, my favorite thing about Tori is she uses relationships and networking to get most of her deals, and I can see she's really good at it. She's very outgoing. She doesn't sound salesman-y. She knows how to throw a story at you to kind of get you on her side, and I can see why a lot of people probably want to do deals with her.
I agree. She's very genuine. I've known Tori for several years, and she's the real deal. She is a very good, fun person that you really want to hang out with. She's like someone you want to go get a beer with. And then if you can make some money, heck yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, with no further ado, we will bring on Tori Benson. Welcome to Cashflow Savannah, episode 16. Tori Benson, how are you today?
I'm wonderful. How are you guys doing today?
We are good. We are
Good.
so excited to learn more about investing in commercial real estate. And I know you're an expert. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm excited to tell you. I love talking about real estate. We have two little girls, and my husband and I talk about it all the time. I mean, we're always talking about business, but to us, it doesn't feel like business. It feels fun. But to them, they're just like, oh my gosh, are you serious again? My mom and dad are so boring. And commercial real estate is like even up a notch where you're talking even higher level business terms. So they just fully zone out. But I'm ready to talk to you guys about that today and make it kind of sound fun.
That's too funny. That sounds like Julie. She's like, I always talk about real estate. My sons just don't really care.
Yeah. But you want to hammer it into their head and be
Yeah.
like, you don't care.
Nothing impresses these kids. You can throw out zeros and they're just like, whatever. But I have to say, my oldest got a finance degree, and his first year in college, he was like, wow, this is kind of a review. And we were so proud. We felt like we had done something right around the dinner table. So good for you, Tori. That's really good. Is your husband in commercial real estate as well?
So as yes, he helps me a little bit on
Okay.
deals, but then he also owns a property inspection business.
Oh,
So we're in Montana and he does a lot of commercial, and he flies to wherever we're buying buildings. He tries to get in there, depending upon his time and inspect our buildings. But he does commercial buildings, homes all over, the ultra high end homes around here. And then also, these mega ranches, under the
wow.
big sky.
So
Yeah.
you guys are quite the power couple. I did not realize that he was in the real estate business as well. That's so interesting. Wow.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
well, good. I'm about
Makes
to
it more
do an
exciting.
inspection, so I might have a question about a commercial inspection here.
Oh yeah, yeah, that'd be awesome. We just recorded a session. It was hilarious, and for my class, I asked my husband to do inspection, like property inspection overview with me. So for an hour and a half, we are just the two of us chatting back and forth about
Right.
the inspection process, which is so funny if you've ever done an interview with a close friend or your partner. It is so we had to edit out so many hilarious moments. But it was great because like I know he's just the master of all these things. And at the end, I can just give that to people and they can watch through that and know exactly what to expect when they're coming into a commercial inspection.
Well, and the
So,
inspection process for it doesn't matter what you're buying in real estate. You want to have it inspected and you want to know that your inspector knows their stuff. So that's really
Yeah.
fantastic. Well, very good.
I
Well,
think you're right. Like one of those things with the inspector is, and we touched on this, is you want to have like a relationship with your inspector. And I don't know about in Georgia, or yeah, you guys are in Georgia. I don't know about there, but in Montana, if you're a real estate agent, you cannot tell somebody to hire a specific
right.
inspector. But you can give them a short list of people, like here's some people to call. And you want to make sure like you're giving them a good list of people, because that inspector, like you want to have a great inspector, not just somebody who's like, here's your report. Okay, great. Like, I don't even know what that have I ever, like most people have never seen an inspection report before. Maybe they have when they bought a house and they just were like, great, you said everything's fine, let's buy it. Like, we're already emotionally attached. But goodness, especially when you're an investor, you kind of want to start to learn what this stuff means and what it is. I mean, you don't need to know how to go in and fix it, but you got to recognize it and learn as you go to become a better investor. So having that inspector that you can kind of like shoot the breeze with and ask them like, hey, I don't know what that means. Tell me more. What's rebar, or whatever, whatever the case might be.
Well, and as an agent, I have to say, there's an inspector here in Savannah. I call him Eeyore because he's, this is terrible, and this is terrible, and this is terrible. And he's a deal killer. I'm sorry. Yeah. And I'm not saying I want any client to get into a bad property, but an inspector's job is to kind of freak out the buyer, but then also say, it's really, it's a couple $100 or it's this or that. Yeah. But yeah, you kind of need someone that will give them the truth, but also doesn't scare them from ever buying real estate for the rest of their life. And there are those inspectors are out there that they're kind of deal killers. So it is to pick the right person.
And if you don't go on that walk around at the end of that inspection, or have a phone call or a Zoom with that inspector to understand what that report means. I mean, I remember I was just talking about it the other day. The first building we bought, he sent me the report and we didn't have a chance. I think he was on the airplane and we didn't have a chance to talk about it for a while. And I was like, holy smoke. Right. We are not buying this building. This is a terrible building. There are so many things wrong. Right. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're going to lose all of our money. What are we doing? And he got off the plane and he called me and he was like, yeah, great building, huh? And I was like, what? This building's terrible. What are you talking about? And it was a great building, but to me, the person who really likes the numbers and kind of looking at like, who are the tenants and, what's the cash flow going to look like? He's, looking at those big problems. To me, they look huge, and the things start piling up, but to him, it just looks like a punch list. Like, oh, that's easy. Here's the bigger items. We can handle that, bing, bang, boom. But to be able to have, I'm lucky I'm married to one, but to be able to have somebody like that, whether you're in residential or commercial, that again, you can be comfortable with and ask questions and just walk you through that process is really nice. It's a load off.
Well, most of the time you have a building that's operating and bringing in money and it's just fine. Like no one's needing these things. No one's asking for these things to be repaired, but it's his job to go through with a magnifying glass and just highlight them for you. So the buyer often feels like, oh no, I have to repair every little thing on this list. And it's like, they're just pointing out stuff that's there. So it's kind of a dance, I think.
It is a dance. And, that's a great segue into the type of commercial real estate that I like to invest in. It's called triple net, triple net. And what that means in a nutshell is that you buy a building and then your tenants pay a lot of the expenses. A lot of people say they pay all the expenses and you don't have to do a thing. That's not the truth. There is more to it when you are an owner of a building filled with triple net leases. But the great thing is yes, you go in, you do an inspection, but whatever's on the inside of that tenant space is actually their responsibility typically. Now this is going to be determined in the lease language. And you'll want to make sure you look through that with an attorney or a really good broker. But the point is that yes, the inspector is going in and maybe that toilet within that space, that toilet room is kind of gross. Okay, the toilet room's gross, but that's not my problem. They're not my patrons that are coming in to use that toilet. That's on that business. I just want to know, is this place a disaster? Or there major electrical problems or like anything big that has to do with the building? So that's where a lot of those things on that commercial inspection report for me as a triple net investor isn't as important because it's not my problem. Now, if it's something where a tenant's lease is coming up in a couple of years and they haven't, they've defaulted on some of the things they were supposed to take care of, then I can say, like, before you move out, you need to take care of these things, because I got pictures of them from when the inspector went through and I bought this building.
Very good. So Tori,
So, Tori,
go ahead, Joan.
So Tori, I just want to go back, and I want to start with your first deal. What got you into it? Why commercial? How did you raise the capital? Go through like the very first deal. How'd you find it? Everything.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll start with the woo stuff. So I had, well, it's not totally woo. So I had been in commercial real estate my entire career, except for a little couple of years in Los Angeles. I was in the entertainment industry working at E Networks. You remember True Hollywood Story? So I produced for them for a couple of years, and then boom, my family was in commercial real estate. I, moved to Colorado. I was in Denver, and I landed a job working for a commercial real estate company that developed and managed commercial properties, mostly retail properties in and around the Denver metro area. And then I went on to work for a historic rehab developer downtown Denver, which was super cool. It was way before Denver exploded. So we went in and we found, we bought these big, beautiful old historic buildings and then rehabbed them into something new. So like the old Benjamin Moore paint factory building, we turned it into lofts and we sold them, and really started the ether of a whole new neighborhood that was annexed into kind of downtown Denver, which was a dilapidated area prior to that. So that was super cool. And then I went into commercial transaction tenant rep. So I was on the transactional side, and then moved to Montana, and I've been here, and I just landed with one of the top real estate agents here and started slinging residential real estate, and that was great. And I love connecting with people, but the time constraint is, or I guess it's not a time constraint. It's like your time is everybody's time all the time. That was really hard for me with two little kids. So I started doing some soul searching. I was super busy. I had also, while I was selling houses and buying houses for people, I also started a startup with a friend of mine, and it was a consumer packaged goods company. We sold CBD for women, and that was awesome. Great learning experience. But I ended up selling to my partner, and I was too busy with real estate, and just like everything was kind of coming to a head. And my husband and I looked at each other, and he was like, you need to just, figure out what you want to do next. Like, slow down, take a pause, let yourself slow down. You have the ability to do this, and I'm going to give that gift to you. So I was like, great. So I went to the bookstore and I picked up a book and a journal, and I listened to what she had to say, and I started then I went out and I bought a planner, which had never really been my forte before. I'm kind of a go with the flow kind of person, like jumping, because you kind of have to be when you're a real estate agent. You kind of have to just be ready and raring. You can't have, I've got my planner here. You can't really be, planning out your day, because you never know what's going to happen to you. So at that point I was like, well, I need to start planning for some goals here. I need to set a goal. And so I bought a 90-day planner. Most of them are 90 days. And I set a 90-day goal to buy a building. And my husband and I have been talking about it for a long time and have been saving for a long time. And somebody had told us, a mentor had told us we needed $500,000. Holy smokes. Like, who just saves up $500,000? That takes a long time. But we were chugging along at that. And we were just like, we were getting there. But even though we weren't there yet, I was like, I'm going to buy a building, 90-day goal. I'm going to buy a building. And I set that 90-day goal, and holy crap, it happened. Like, I bought a building in 90 days, and it all kind of just happened. It was like, I put my toe in the water and I just let the water take me. And the more I started telling people, I was fearful to tell people like, yeah, I want to buy a building. Like, what do I know about buying a building? well, I knew a lot about buying buildings. I have been in real estate my entire career, but I had never been on that buyer buying like a large building before, managing tenants before. So it was all very scary, but I ripped off the Band-Aid and I was like, you go, girl, you can do this. And started connecting with people and talking to people, telling people about my goal. And suddenly this building materialized. A broker brought it to me, and it was an off-market deal that they weren't. It had been under contract, but they weren't able to find the investors to get the deal done, and so they swooped in and they were like, "What do you think of this?" And it was an automotive building, which when I was starting out, I was like looking at these sexy brick buildings, like mixed use with a coffee shop and a loft on top. Like that'd be so cool to own that. And suddenly I'm looking at this auto body building, like tire shop and windshield repair. That was not what I was hoping for. I was hoping for something sexy, but I didn't know. So this deal came across my plate and I ran it through the analyses that I had been practicing on. Meanwhile, I was taking all sorts of different classes and things and reading books to learn and talking to people. So I had an analysis and I ran that building through the analysis and I was like, shoot, darn, this broker's right. Like this is a building that I can buy and make some money on this thing. This will cash flow, Savannah. So I went through the process. I hired a great real estate attorney who helped me immensely. And my broker was a huge help, commercial broker, by the way, huge help. And walked through that process and closed on a building. I bought a 10,000 square foot building and I was off to the races.
The single tenant building, is that right? Two tenants.
Yep, 2 tenants were in the building. I really like multi-tenant buildings. Mm-hmm. It really helps to, spread out your risk a little bit. Because if you have a 1-tenant building and they happen to leave, and here's a misnomer, a lot of people will be like, but they have a 10-year lease or they have a 20-year lease. Yeah, but what if something dire happens with their business and they have to leave and they can't pay you? Then what? So yes, they might have a 10, 20-year lease, but that's not the end all be all here, folks. So, if they leave and they can't pay, nobody's paying you and you can't pay, or you have to come out of your own pocket and pay the mortgage. So I like multi-tenant buildings where I know sometimes I strategize where like there's one tenant that I know that they are just like, they're going to be there unless like the worst thing ever happens. And what they're paying pays the nut on the building. So it pays the mortgage and the expenses. And then I know that like Tori's not losing anything. Tori's going to break even regardless. And then I can hustle around and, make the other things happen so that we can start cash flowing again.
That's great.
So I want to ask you, this was your own capital or did you have to go raise capital?
This was our own capital. Yep. We saved and saved and saved, scrimped and saved in order to make it happen.
And the deal,
like 25% down? Like
we put 20% down. Okay. So typically on, commercial, and right now, when we're recording this, the markets are still a little hairy, but you can still put 20 to 25% down. A lot of lenders are looking for more, they're looking for 35, 40% down in order to get, help you get a better rate or just give them a little more security in the loan. But if you've got a great solid building that you've found that has tenants that are paying and you've got some leases that have some, some buffer, some time on them, then most lenders are going to feel pretty good about that and probably give you a 25 to, 75% loan to value or at 80% loan to value.
That's awesome. So let's go to your second deal. How did you scale into that second deal?
Sure. So on that first deal, there was some value add for sure there. One tenant was already kind of squeaking a little bit about maybe not wanting to be there anymore, but they had a couple years left on their lease. They had negotiated before we purchased, like COVID hit right before we purchased this building. And so they had already negotiated in a little rent adjustment for COVID. And so we knew that that was an opportunity, and we had negotiated some free marketing time. We told them, hey, we're going to start marketing your space. We'll give you this, this reduced rent. But in exchange for that, we want to be able to market your space for a better tenant if that, comes to fruition. And so we just started hustling on that. I started calling real estate departments of different companies that I thought would be a fit there, and just started kind of, hustling around trying to make that happen. And within less than a year, I found a really great corporate tenant that wanted to open up a franchise there. And so we started negotiating that. And while that was happening, we got an unsolicited offer on the building. The building was not for sale. We got an unsolicited offer, but it was too low. And so I was like, no, thanks. I'm already negotiating with this corporate tenant. Like, this building's about to be a slam dunk. We're going to cash flow this puppy, really well. And they came back to me a couple of weeks later, and they were like, we really want the building, we'll give you what you want for it. And so boom, we went under contract. And so in just over a year or so, we sold that building. And then we were able to 1031 exchange into another building. And that building as well, that was a building that was off market that I got through a broker. And so here's a lesson, is that, a lot of people want to find these off-market deals, not involve the brokers. But oftentimes, if the brokers know that you are a buyer and you will close, they will bring these off-market deals to you. Yes, they're going to want a commission. Like, I've paid as the buyer, I've paid commissions to brokers before, because I'm getting a deal. I'm getting an off-market deal, and I want that deal, and I've run the numbers, and I'm happy to pay that commission. And oftentimes when they're off-market, the reason they're off-market is the owner doesn't want to pay a commission. So that's a little tip for you. Like, don't disregard the brokers out there. They work hard, and if you get in their good graces and they know you're going to close, then they might bring you a deal.
Sounds like you spent a lot of time making relationships, Tori, and that's, in my opinion, crucial in this business, is having those relationships. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's so funny. Marketing and relationships are these two things where in my Girl Buy That Building class, I'm always talking, I'm like, oh, here we are again. Because people will be like, well, how do you negotiate that? And I'm like, well, you actually have to put on your marketing cap again and figure out, like, all right, what's this person thinking? How am I going to have this conversation? What do I think drives them? It's all, marketing. Like, business is marketing. And then the relationships is creating relationships with people. I want people to work with me, and I want to have fun while I'm working. Like, this can be a drab business if you make it a drab business, but if you make it fun and you bring your personality to it, people will remember you. Like, this is my pink postcard that I send out. We buy buildings. Right. And so when I call on owners of buildings, I'm like, hey, this is Tori. I sent you that pink postcard. And they're like, oh my gosh, I did get that pink postcard. It's something that makes me unique and stands out. And then on that, I can start to build relationships. And you can do it with everybody, your lender, your attorney. They don't all have to be these professionals that you just, deal with when you need them. You can, call them up and see how their day's going. What do they need from you? How can you support them? The Go-Giver is such a good book. Have you read that book?
I haven't, but I've heard about it.
No? Oh, you guys, there's a book for you to read, The Go-Giver. Yeah. And I feel like I listened to a podcast recently about, maybe it was called Giftology. This guy, all about gifting.
Right.
And so, like, the more you give, the more you will receive. And that is how you build relationships and your network, so that people know that you're you're a great person to work with and they want to work with you next time. I sent out, we bought a building that had a meat market in it, and they didn't do deliveries or anything, but after we closed, I called the meat market and I was like, can we put together some awesome, baskets or, boxes of meats and steaks and cheeses and whatever. So they put together this awesome curated package. And then my assistant found this super cool delivery company. I forget what it was called. But all these delivery people came and picked up it's like Uber for delivery. It was so cool. So all these different people came and picked up these packages and then delivered them all over to my attorney and to my environmental engineer and to our property management team, like all the people. And so steaks were just like flying that day. And my environmental engineer, who did our phase 1, he texted me like that weekend a picture of his dinner plate with the steak on it. And he was just like, oh my gosh, these steaks are so amazing. And I was like, yes, that's so cool. I went from did a deal with him and I had to ask him all these annoying questions and, was just like, tell me more. I don't know why this is that. And what's that? But afterwards, he was happy to share a steak with his wife and send me a photo of it. And then the same thing, one of my attorneys, she sent me a message and was like, oh my gosh, I grew up in that town where that meat market is. Our family would go there all the time. This brings back so many memories. Didn't even know, I was just trying to support our new tenant. But they're like through like giving back and gifting, I was creating like new relationships with people and they will never forget those things. So super important.
So I'm glad you brought up that postcard.
Yeah.
Are you doing mail marketing or what kind of marketing are you doing?
So yes, it's quite targeted. And it takes a lot of time and I'm still trying to refine that process. There's some people I know that do this really well. But I've got these stacks of postcards that I ordered on moo.com and just designed them myself. But I felt like designing something, a piece of mail that it's heavy. It's a postcard. It's like heavy quality stock and colorful, with, a quick message on it is something I wouldn't throw away. Like those big mailer things, I'm just like, oh, this is trash, this is probably still trash too, but I think it's recyclable. So that's good. But this is something where I've talked to so many people. So I send this out and then the next week or two, I send out a letter. Hey, I sent you a pink postcard. It's me again. And then I call them.
Is it a pink letter?
It's just a regular letter and a regular letter, hand addressed. Everything's hand addressed that I do. Again, an extra step, and I don't know whether it works or not, but I think I would read or look at something if there was, a real hand addressed and not one of those like printed. I can tell now, if it's a printed, like looks like somebody's handwriting, it's not. But somebody took the time to hand address this to me. Like, let me see what this is. So yeah, it's the postcard, the letter, and then I call, and then typically, I'll leave a message, but I'll have to call again because a lot of times people don't call you back. And then I'll try to go on LinkedIn and find them. LinkedIn and commercial real estate is really is a good platform to be on. But yeah, I'll go on to LinkedIn and try to connect with them, and then just keep following up. In my letter, I'll try to put something about what's happening in the market or some sort of piece of educational content. Same with my phone call, just so it's not I'm calling to buy a building from you, because everybody's calling them to try to sell like all these brokers, commercial brokers are trying to call these building owners to sell their building because they want to drum up commissions. So they're trying to find buildings to sell to people. And so again, I have to be different and telling your story, I'm sure you guys have talked about this before, telling your story. I know I'm different than all the male commercial real estate brokers that are calling these building owners to list their buildings. I'm actually a woman. I'm a mom. I'm a wife that is trying to build a portfolio and build legacy for my family. And I want to teach my girls how to buy these buildings and how to do this so that when they are older, they're going to inherit something that they know how to do and they're empowered to do this. Not to mention there's like hardly any women that own buildings compared to men. Everybody I call, they're dudes. And I love talking to dudes. But when a girl answers the phone, when a woman answers the phone and she's the owner of the building, I'm like, oh, hey, how's it going? And she's always like, I got your Pink Postcard. But that's kind of my process for connecting with owners of buildings. And I like to do that.
Are you cherry picking buildings that you really want? Are you picking them based on the tenant and you really want to buy the tenant as much as you want to buy the building? Like how do you figure out which buildings to mail on? And then what do you do with the ones that you don't want to buy yourself? Do you then send those?
It kind of depends upon the day. It's kind of a funny thing, picking up the phone and calling people every day, like it gets monotonous. And so I'll take some time off or I'll just get a wild hair and be like, oh, I'm going to call on that building I just drove by because it looked cool. And it's probably not something I want to buy, but I want to call that person. They might own other buildings.
Yeah.
And they probably know other people in this town or in this city. And so why not just call and, talk to them? What was your experience like? Or, hey, looks like you bought this building and you start, like I called a woman lately or recently. She started a doggy daycare company and she bought the building. She built the building and bought the building. And so when I called her, it was kind of a conversation of, I'm sure you don't want to sell this building, but I just had to call you. Like, congratulations. That's so cool you did that. I'm an investor as well, a real estate investor. And I'd love, how did you finance the building? What process boom. Through that, I had somebody to write down, a lender to call. And I learned a little something. You can learn something, there is not one deal that is the same. And so whoever you are calling, you can learn something from. So I try to look at it so to answer your question, yes, I kind of cherry pick buildings and my lists are based on certain asset classes and whatnot. But sometimes, things slip into those lists where I'm like, why is this building on this list? I don't want this, but I call them anyways. Cause I'm like, you never know. They might be like, actually, funny you called. I own a mobile home park, 2 towns over or whatever. And then I'll be like, cool. I don't really specialize in mobile home parks. I found something I don't necessarily want to buy myself, but I might invest in if somebody, wants to raise money for it. So then I'll call, one of my buddies who's a mobile home park investor and flip that deal to them. So yeah, it's a fun process, but it can be a slog. There's a lot of days, a lot of weeks, a lot of months where you are just not, and people I'm so nice. Sometimes people are just like, I don't want to talk to you, and they're so rude and it's so hard. And then you're like, why am I doing this? People are so rude, but the rest of the people are so nice and open. So you just got to keep going. What is the saying? Every no leads to a yes.
Oh yeah. So I want to ask, how do you get in touch with the actual owners? Are you sending the mail to the owner? Are you sending it to the building?
So that's also a slog. So when I first started, I bought a list through a guy that was referred to me, who does printing stuff, but then they have list access. So I bought a list and he was able to narrow down the list pretty well, but couldn't get me the actual, there were some owners' names on there, but not all of them. And so my assistant and I had to go through, one by one and research those people to find out, okay, well, X LLC owns this building. Well, who do I call at X LLC and where do they live or where is their office? And so dig on the World Wide Web and find their contact information. And so that's what we did. But that time, in my opinion, is so much more worth it than just blasting out these postcards, and who knows where they went. They might have gone, half of them might have gone to, the registered agents, and they're never going to get to anywhere else past that. So why spend the money if you're not going to put the time into creating a valuable list?
That's it. That's where most people are like, oh, I just do mail-ins. And I'm like, who do you mail it to? Are you just wasting your money and doing this mass mail out list? Which that's what you hear about a lot is
Yeah.
send it to, and I'm like, that just sounds like a waste of money. Why not like hand pick a list? I'd rather spend the time, hand pick a list that you have a good idea. Cause I mean, that time that you spend, if you get one deal, like that's well worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, rather than sitting there and being like, okay, I just spent $5,000. Hopefully somebody calls me.
Yeah.
I mean,
Uh-huh.
that to me, that's what just sending a postcard that somebody else generates and sends out through a mailing house, like that's what that is for me. I'm like, that's not how I do it. And I also, it takes longer, but I also like to look up and be like, who's this person I'm calling? Who is this person? And so then I can call and I can be like, not sketchy, like, oh, I just
Yeah.
fully researched you. I know all about your life, but at least I have some, hey, I saw, it looks like your company is in this building and it looks awesome. And, here's some things. I oftentimes call, like, I invest mostly in Minnesota. That's where I'm from originally. And so some people I've called and I've been like, hey, I grew up like a mile down the road. This is so crazy. There's this bread store that is in your building. And I remember my mom used to go to that bread store with 4 of us in the back of the Buick station wagon. Why were we stopping for bread at this random spot when there's bread at the grocery store? Well, it was like the bread place. I forget what the name of the bread company was, but it was like the bread place. And they had reduced price bread there. And so that's why we were like, if she was over there, she was like, cool, I'm going to go. I've got all these kids. I'm going to buy reduced price bread. So I had that conversation with this owner when I called, and it just made me a person rather than just another person trying to get business. It was just like, hey, I am looking for a building to buy. I don't know if you want to sell your building, but I had to call you anyways because I thought this was so cool. I used to go here, blah, blah, blah. Just finding a talking point that makes somebody in their busy day not feel like, oh my gosh, another person that's just trying to sell me something or get something from me.
Yeah. Cause I always ask, I'm like, if you're calling these people, like, how's it like not and following up constantly? I'm like, if it's me and I'm just getting all these spammed calls, like I'm just getting annoyed. I'm like, I don't want to sell it to you just because I'm annoyed.
Yeah.
And where's that fine line of like, oh, I keep following up with you without annoying them?
Yeah, it's so true. So what have you done? Or have you not figured that out yet?
I haven't figured. No, I've heard so many people talk about mailing, and I'm
Yeah.
like, and they're just like, oh, I just send this big list, and it just doesn't make sense to me. I'm like,
Mm.
it just doesn't make sense. I'm like, I'm looking for that perfect list to send out. Even if I don't like get a call back, it's fine. But at least I know it's going somewhere that I have a higher chance.
Yeah. So somebody really wise once told me, when you're calling, I was really upset one day about how rude somebody was to me. And I'm like, I'm not trying to sell them something. I'm trying to buy their building and give them a whole bunch of money. Like, what was that? What was the problem with that person? But then this person told me, she was like, Tori, they are not your 25%. So 25% of the people are going to be like your people, and they're going to react to you and respond to you, and you're going to get great business from them. And there's enough business within your 25%, but 75% out there, they're not your people. So stop worrying about them. Move on to the next one, because your 25%, they're there, they're out there, they're waiting for you. But you can't be worried and spending too much time about, oh, what are these people going to say? Or, I really like that building, and that guy was not nice to me and doesn't want to sell to me, and but you know what? Today he wasn't my 25%. I'm going to keep him on my list, and I'll ping him in 6 months, just lightly. And he might come around. You never know. I might have caught him at the wrong time, or try another avenue. But ultimately, if that guy doesn't want to do business with me, no harm, no foul. Move on.
Yeah.
I appreciate you talking about your process, because it doesn't matter what kind of investment strategy people have. They're always looking for deals, right? Single family, they're always looking for deals. Multifamily, they're always looking for deals. Trailer parks, can't find enough of them. And, you obviously know a lot of the agents in town, a lot of the brokers, and it would be easy for you to sit back and say, well, why aren't these people that I already know and have known for years, why aren't they bringing me deals? So you're waiting on that, but you're also really going after your own, which is, Chandler and I do as well. We're always trying to build those relationships, see what's out there. Like, you kind of have to always be on your game. It's great to hear about your process.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fun to talk about my process. But I will tell you, we all do this full time, right? So
Right.
there's a lot of you out there that are listening to this that you're like, how do you find the time to do all this? Like, I got to go to my job. I got to work. So that's where there are still deals out there if you go and you get to know some brokers in the market. Or even if you're, connecting with bankers or whatnot, they know about deals too, because they have clients that, might have called them and said, hey, I'm thinking about selling my building. So anybody that you're connecting with, and you can do that, is even if you have a 40-hour plus week a job, you can be sending out those quick emails or connecting with brokers and being like, hey, I like this building, what do you think of this? It's not impossible to be an investor on the side. We all can put in this extra effort because we are doing this full time, but I just want to give that caveat that I understand that not everybody's got hours every day to allocate to, dredging through lists and finding out who owns this LLC.
So I want to ask, you mentioned you have 3 points that you like to talk about, courage, and I forget the other two. Can you
Sure.
talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So a lot of people are like, okay, Tori, I get residential investing. I've bought a house, our own house, and we're renting it out, or I'm looking at a house to buy or a condo to buy or something to buy that I'm going to rent out. I get the residential piece, but how do I buy a building? Like, buy a building? Say what? That sounds huge. Who can buy buildings? That seems like only these huge institutional players can do that. No, not true. So my number one step is like, how do I buy a building? Is to just like pour on the courage, figure out how to feel empowered and courageous, and be like, I'm going to put my big girl underpants on today, and I am just going to start making this thing happen and start asking questions, take a class, buy a planner and set a 90-day goal to buy a building. That starts, it starts the process, and know that you can too. There are so many people that don't know anything that buy buildings and buy residential investments, and they don't know anything. They're just like, great, here, do this. And their attorney signs the paperwork and they're donezo and they're moving along. So you can do this. And we have access to so much podcasts and books and all the things. So number one, courage, empower yourself. And part of that piece is creating, if any of you do not have a personal financial statement, create a personal financial statement, PFS. Call your banker or get a hold of Cashflow Savannah. I'm sure she can point you in the right direction.
I Googled my first one. I just got a free one online and then I made it my own. Absolutely.
So that's how you find out, like, what am I on paper financially? How much money do we really have? And that's what my husband and I did. We sat down, we're like, how much do we really have? And once you see all of that, you can figure out like, oh, could I rob Peter to pay Paul in order to like beef up this account so I could actually go and make this happen? Likely you may be able to do something like that, or at least you can see everything in one space and you can start to set some goals around what that personal financial statement looks like. And then you can start to say, okay, now I gotta start looking around at what buildings are out there, because I know that based on how much a building is, we talked about this earlier, I'm going to have to put 20, let's just I would say just shoot for 25% down, because there's other fees and things that you need to think about and prepare for. So let's say you need 25%. So if you're going to buy $1 million building, you're going to need $250,000. That's a lot of money. Maybe you don't have that, but where can you get $250,000? Now you can start to put together a plan. Okay, how do I buy a building? Well, I need money. Okay, how much money do I need? Okay, I want to buy $1 million building. I need $250,000. There's your first goal. I need to figure out how to find $250,000. Start talking to lenders, start, listening to podcasts. How do you raise money? All the things. Talk to your family. Does anybody want to invest? Join an investment group, figure it out, start talking to people. And then you can start looking at buildings online. Crexy, LoopNet are a couple of the free ones that you can go and search through. Sometimes Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace might have buildings on there, more localized buildings that are less expensive if you have a lower starting point. So then you can start looking, and then you can start understanding, reading the offering memorandums. They're called OMs. Read the offering memorandum, look at the terms, learn about leases, learn about the tenants that are in these type of buildings. And you can just do that, carve out 10 minutes every morning and go on Crexy or LoopNet and just start looking at buildings and see what appeals to you. And then this is the big one. You got to pull out the courage again. You got to pick up the phone and call that real estate broker that's listing that building. And that is really scary for a lot of people. Like, that feels scary because you're like, this person knows so much. I'm not really an investor. They probably talk to so many super rich people or family offices that are, and like, what do they want to? Yes, they want to talk to you because you might buy something from them. So call them and say, hey, I'm looking for a building to buy. This is my budget. I saw this one that you had listed and I'm interested in it. Tell me more. I'm sorry, I'm a fledgling. I'm learning. So I might have some questions that seem rudimentary, but throw a girl a bone here. And that person is going to be like, cool, humans want to help you. Like, that's in our nature. They want to help. So if you come at it, that way, rather than sounding know-it-all-ish, I mean, you guys know, like, if a know-it-all calls you, you kind of are like, you already know, why am I talking to you? But if you don't know and you want to help, somebody wants to help you. So pick up the phone and call on those buildings. Even if you don't like them, call on the building, ask questions about it, learn. And then guess what? You have put your foot in the water and that river is about to take you. And you are going to learn and you're going to find a building someday down the road and you're going to raise that money. But you can't do it until you start sticking your toe in the water and taking action. So I'd say empower yourself, start educating yourself, poking around, looking at the buildings, understanding, the tenants, the tenant mix, the areas, all that stuff. Google's your friend. And then jump in the river and start calling people. Like, just learn, network, do it.
Well, Tori, a little known fact about me is my husband and I started out in commercial. We did commercial real estate investing before we really got into residential.
Okay.
And the best thing that happened to us was we were looking for a lease. And so we had contacted an agent and she was a complete bulldog. And I mean that in the best sense of the word. As soon as I worked with her for a short amount of time, I said, this chick knows her stuff. She's fantastic. Her name is Vonnie Majewski. If anyone is buying in the Hilton Head area, she is fantastic. And I used her on multiple deals afterwards. And I felt very uneducated and nervous, all the things that you're saying. But having Vonnie in my corner was huge, to have this experienced agent. And she really picked with the ball and just ran with it. And she actually made a lot of our deals happen just because she just took it on the chin and kept going. I mean, some of these sellers were terrible to her. She got in several shouting matches on our behalf. It was bizarre. But anyway, I just can't say enough. And that didn't cost us a dime, right? The agent is paid for by the seller. So that was a free, expert that was in my corner from day one. And I did exactly what you said. I don't know what I'm doing. We do need a building. This is our budget, blah, 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 blah. And she took it from there. And this can apply to commercial or residential, whatever you're into. If you can get a free expert in your corner, they'll get you the rest of the way, but you have to pick up the phone and call them and explain who you are and what you want and make them believe that you're competent and speak English, things like that. But that was
Totally.
huge.
It's so important. It is so important. And I think that's something when you're calling people, you remember that you are interviewing them.
Mm-hmm.
They're not interviewing you. You're trying to find a broker that you want to work with. And so asking them questions and, being curious. If they don't have time for you, you don't want to work with them. They're not your 25%. Move along to somebody who knows. And if you have those questions, people will respect you more. If you're like, hey, what's your experience in commercial? How many buildings have you sold this year? What's your relationship? Do you have a title company that you really like to work with that knows commercial? Okay, great. If they don't have an answer, then, they might not be your person. Hey, have you worked with an environmental engineer that you really like? If they're like, what's an environmental engineer? I don't know what that's for. Then, oh my gosh, this person does not know commercial. They don't know how the commercial process works. Hey, do you have a project management timeline for how the due diligence period works? I mean, these are all things that sound, if you've never done a commercial deal before, you might be like, what's that? But you will learn. But they need to know, your broker needs to know how this process works. If they're just your friend and you're hiring them because they're your friend, that might ruin your friendship and might not get you a great deal. And you might, miss some things. You might not. You might be lucky and get the unicorn deal and everything went fine and everybody learned something along the way. That's cool too. But I would definitely just remember that in this business, you are interviewing the people that you are working with. It is not up to them. They're not. And if they judge you, that's on them. You don't want to work with them. You are interviewing them. This is your time. This is your money that you're looking to invest, not theirs.
I feel like when you call people and you kind of ask them those questions and you're not a know-it-all, it feeds into their egos and they're like, I'm helping them and I like them. And when some know-it-all calls, they're just like, this guy, I don't really want to talk to him. But if you ask questions and they're answering them, they're like, I'm really helping this person. They tend to want to help you even more and possibly help you get the deal. So
they do, and again, it's like dropping those little things, I'll drop to people, for example, like, hey, our family, I'm doing this because I want to create passive income for our family because we would like to go buy a sailboat and live on a sailboat for a sabbatical. And people are like, oh, that's cool. I'm like, yeah, I know it's kind of crazy, but this is what we're thinking about doing. And I got to get my butt in gear so we can do this before our kids are too old and don't want to go. And, and then I'm this real person. And then a lot of times, like relationship building, they'll be like, I have a friend that did that. Do you want me to introduce you to that friend that did that? And I'm like, yes, I would love to meet your friend that did that because I need to learn more and, assuage my fears about this trip. So, it's just, it's such a cool, I have so much fun with all the layers, even the financial analysis of this business. But the relationship thing is just so neat. And you have such an opportunity to just chill and lay back and like not take it so seriously and get to know people. This might be high level, but we are still all here. We're all human. And so you got to figure out how to connect with people eye to eye and have some fun with it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why are you even doing this?
I love your 25% thing that you mentioned. If they're not your 25%, move on to the next one because it's not dealing with people that you just don't like. There's always other buildings out there and just move on. I love that though.
Yeah, it's such a good one. I mean, you can use it for everything. It's at school pickup, if there's another mom that's not digging on me, I'm just like, she's not my 25%. That's cool. That's all right.
Let it
That's
go.
fine. Move along. Yeah.
Corey, talk about the environmental engineer and the process. Sure. I have only used one when flipping a residential property into commercial. So I've never actually used an environmental engineer on any of my commercial deals. So I would love to learn about that. How do you use an environmental engineer every time, or can you give us some more info on that?
I have used one every time.
Wow.
It's an expense, but I don't know. I can't really give you like an estimate because it depends upon the property, but It's several $1,000s.
It's
at
part of your
least.
due diligence to have an
It's
engineer go through the
part of your due
property.
diligence period. And so you want to know like what was happening on this site before. Like it wasn't always this automotive building. What was happening before? Like 100 years ago, what was happening right here? It could have been 100 years ago, it could have been a gas station.
Right.
It could have been like, there could have been all sorts of stuff that was happening on this site that you would never know was there. And so that environmental, there's two preliminary, so a phase 1 and then a phase 2. So the phase 1 is I've done on every building. The engineer goes in, they do a visual inspection of the property, but then they also go back and they pull all the information they can, all the historical records of that property. And like I feel like the last one I got was literally like a 300-page report, which is really overwhelming. And in the beginning, I mean, I still don't even know what all this stuff means, but you'll start skimming through it. And there's some cool pictures. You see pictures like maps and plat maps and aerials of what was happening on this property before, like, oh, there was a little house here and that looks like there was a chicken coop over there. And oh, okay. And then a couple years later, it was like, those were gone. And then there was this other weird building. What was that doing? So that environmental engineer digs into the historical uses of the property and then also looks at the properties all around, not all around, but like in the general vicinity. So we were looking at a building that was close to an airport last year. And there's a lot of like, what do you call it? Just like companies that are doing things that could impact, the environment. So they're using chemicals and different oils and who knows what, and so those things, if not handled properly, can leak and spread into the soil and could be in your soil and then could be vaporizing into your building. Okay, if you've got vaporizing chemicals into your building, that is now your issue as the owner of the building. And so when you're going to buy that building, you want to make sure if, anything like that has happened in the past, or if that environmental engineer raises any red flags, that will take you to a phase 2, which means that you're going to do more invasive like testing. We're going to test the air. We're going to test the soil. Once you get into that, that is danger zone because now you're going to know about these things.
Yeah.
And that's scary to know about those things and you're still going to buy it. But that's also scary for the person that you're under contract with. The seller doesn't really want to know those things because now that's material facts that they have to disclose that are happening with that property. But very important that if any red flags are raised, you kind of dig in as best you can as to what's happening there. That's huge because that can cost so much money to remediate environmental things and could
That's
just
great advice.
Yeah, could just be really tough on the back end to sell the property or, who knows? I mean, it's like a legal can of worms there. So
On the residential side, how we have to do a lead-based paint exhibit because in Savannah, we have a lot of old homes and I've had so many buyers go, well, should I test for lead-based paint? And I'm like, do you really want to know if there's lead-based paint 2 inches thick in the paint? Because now you own a building with known lead-based paint and you have to disclose. And it's important to either you want to know if you're not going to buy it or you don't want to know if you already own it. I hate to say it that way, but it's business.
I mean, it's happened to us before where we didn't buy this building, but there was storage, like an underground storage container. And so when we found out that there was an underground storage container, you got to figure out like what's in that container. Is there still something in that container or was it removed? And now has the environmental agency has it been brought to them and then cleared by them? You need that paperwork, in my opinion, because when I go to sell that, like I'm not holding on to these buildings forever. Whether it's a short term or long term, at some point, somebody's going to have to sell this. And God knows I don't want to have my kids inherit some crap building from me that has all these environmental issues with it. And then they have to deal with that on the back end. And so figure it out now. That's,
Yeah.
that's a big part of the way I do business. I pay for my smart, awesome attorney, and I pay for the testing so that I can cover myself on the back end when I go to sell that.
Well, this is a crazy story, Tori, but I happen to own a property right off of Duran in Savannah, which is a very big thoroughfare. And one of our team members, Bella, and I were working there one day. We were trying to get it set up for a short-term rental. And I mean, I swear to you, we thought a bomb went off. It scared us to death. We're in the house, huge boom. And we're like, I really was checking myself and her, like, are we okay? We go outside. And across this basically 5-lane road, because it's 4 plus a center turn lane, they had been scraping to put in concrete across the way. It's commercial all the way, across the street. And they had hit a gas tank or whatever, underground gas tank that they didn't know was there, and it exploded. Just the scraping created a spark. There were gas fumes left in the tank. This was only a few years ago. And Bella and I, our hearts were just like, and just, we run outside and there's just this huge flame of gas. I mean, it shut down the Ren for hours. It was crazy. And yes, I wonder if maybe they skimped on the environmental engineer, because they should have known that tank was there before they were digging. I mean, call me crazy.
That could have been was a real problem. I mean,
thank God no one got hurt.
Thank God everybody's okay.
It was bad. I mean, my heart palpitates when I still think about how loud, and you felt it just boom. It's like, what was that?
Yeah. And I mean, to your point, you start moving so fast. I mean, we all have so much to do in our daily lives. So, you skip on that phase 1 or the environmental engineer, and then you move along, and then suddenly you're like, oh yeah, this parking lot needs to be replaced. And then you're like, great. Okay. Just hire the parking lot contractor. And suddenly there's bulldozers over there and people are digging things up, and oh my gosh, there's an oil tanker, like whatever it is. Now that is your problem. Now that's scary. That is your problem. And I don't know anything about how to deal with that stuff. I don't want to deal with that kind of stuff. So again, you gotta, don't be cheap. Make sure you spend the money to have this stuff done, because you don't want to have it come back on you. We're in this game to make money. We're not in this game to hurt people or have tragedy, like calamities, or lose money. So protect yourself on the front end, and you'll have a better chance at that long term.
I'm dying to ask you one more triple net question. We haven't done a ton with triple net, Tori, and I know we're running short on time. But everyone, triple net sounds like the holy grail because you don't do anything, you don't do any repairs. But really, the owner of the building is still going to be, my understanding, and please educate me. I'm asking for education, but is the owner responsible for the air conditioner unit? Is the owner responsible for the roof? Is the owner responsible for the parking lot? Like, what things generally are included in a triple net where the client is going to take it, and what things generally are not? Like, where are your biggest pitfalls as the owner of a triple net leased building?
Sure. So I will answer generally.
Okay.
It's all over the place. Even within a building, if you have multiple tenants, each lease is negotiated by a different team of people. And so those terms may be different. So typically a triple net lease will place the landlord in charge of replacement of roof, replacement of parking lot, and the tenants will participate in the repair costs. Okay. HVAC, which is, heating and cooling, that will typically be something that typically, generally be something the landlord will pay for the unit, but the tenant will maintain that unit throughout the term of their lease. And you want to be careful there. Like, it's even the same in residential, where I've had tenants in residential properties that I've had where I've been like, well, you have to have a cleaner come once a month, and you have to do, mow the lawn. And do they do that? No, they pocket that money and they run with it. And you want to think about that with your property manager and when you're negotiating new leases. You have to look at those nuances, like who is paying for what, who's in charge of what. And having a good property manager, especially in the beginning, that can understand leases and know who's in charge of what, and then also balance the budget that way and charge back the CAM expenses, the triple nets. That's really helpful because it can get convoluted. If you have three tenants in a building, one might be participating in roof replacement costs, but the next one might not be participating in roof replacement nor in repairs. They might only be responsible for 25% of the cost of roof repairs and 15% of the cost of this. And so it can get very nuanced. So again, just making sure that you have, like, you're reading leases, you understand what the agreements are between, you and the tenants. And then when you go to close on the building, you have a property management team, or if you're going to be the property manager, you understand, the lay of the land.
Interesting.
So Tori, where can we find you?
Sure. So you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Girl Buy That Building. I also have a LinkedIn page, Tori Benson, and you can also find that Girl Buy That Building or Marker Buoy Investments. And I do offer a 30-minute free strategy session. So if you're thinking on any of these commercial things, or like Julie was asking about a phase 1 environmental, we can hash it out a little bit more. And I'm happy to do that. That's kind of my give back. I love talking to people about real estate, and I can help however I can in 30 minutes.
Thank you so much, Tori. You're so knowledgeable on this subject, and I've learned a ton, and I know our listeners will have as well. It's such a great space in any market. I really am very, very bearish on commercial real estate. So excited to hear more about what you're doing. Hope you'll come back in the future and update us on some bigger and better deals as you just keep growing.
I would love to. Thank you, Julie and Chandler. It was awesome to be here today. And you guys too. If you need a 30-minute free strategy session, you just hop on. You call me up. Let's figure some things out and get you moving.
I like it.
Thank you so much. We will have all of Tori's info in the show notes, and feel free to reach out to Chandler or myself as well if you ever want to get in touch. But thank you so much, Tori. We wish you all the best in your investing.
Have a great day, you guys.
Bye-bye.
Well, thank you for coming and listening to episode 16 with Tori Benson. I really enjoyed that podcast. What'd you think?
It was fantastic. I learned a ton.
Please like, comment, subscribe, share, spread the word on this podcast. We really enjoy educating everybody about whatever you want to do in real estate in Savannah. So we'll see you in the next one.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.